Welcome back. We want to thank Nationwide for sponsoring our continuing conversation with Dr. Janet Donilon. We've been discussing workforce issues. We've been discussing well-being, diversity issues, et cetera. All these issues that affect the profession. One of the natural responses to a perception of labor shortage is to try to increase the pipeline. And there have been a number of schools that have been proposed, and with full transparency, I am involved in one of those schools. And so I think we can't let Dr. Donilon get off without at least addressing the role that the AVMA has, to make sure we clarify the role the AVMA and AAVMC has in accrediting new schools. And probably I should say more directly, the role that the COE, the Council of Education, has in accrediting new schools. So with that rather foggy introduction, Dr. Donilon, can you tell us, first of all, the status of new schools and your experience in how schools are proposed, how they followed through, and I'll step in where I can, but I think it's important that our audience understands the process.
And I'm going to take us back on a history lesson just for a minute. In terms of AVMA, one of the key things that it started doing from the very beginning was trying to standardize a little bit about what was veterinary education. You know, we've been around 160 years. And in about 1946, they more formalized the process by establishing a council on education, and that was really key. And then in 1973, they established the CBTA, which is the Committee for Veterinary Technicians, so the accreditation. And those, to me, were very key things that the AVMA did. But it is important for folks to understand, just as you said, Phil, the AVMA really is involved in terms of providing resources to make sure that the COE and the CBTA can do their job, but they do those accreditation decisions separately from the AVMA, and that's critical. And so what is accreditation about? Well, accreditation is a voluntary process that we have in the US that is trying to make certain that a school meets educational standards, so that if a student goes to it and pays tuition, that they can really kind of be assured that it's a quality program, and the publics can be assured, in case those people took out student loans, that this was a quality program. And so accreditation serves a real purpose. And with COE, what they will do then is, it's important to have standards. It's important that they are the right standards. You don't want to have unfair standards. You want to have standards that really do help ensure that a program meets those standards. However they meet those standards, it's a quality program, and that's a good thing. So that's what COE will be looking at. COE does not look at, oh, we should only have 24 programs or we should have 100 programs. That's not their job. COE is looking to see if a program meets the standards, and you want to make sure that that a program can replicate its ability to meet those standards on an ongoing basis. And so that's key too. So it's making sure that any programs that are developed and that are accredited are able to then continue to do that sort of thing, so anyone that goes to that program can feel good about it. So that's what COE will do. So a new program, a program that's interested, will then approach the COE. They can have a consultative visit if they would like, because that could be helpful. Then they'll try to work through the stages of provisional accreditation before then becoming actually formally accredited. So it's a sound process. It requires volunteers who are very passionate. So I'm going to put a pitch out there, you guys. Look online. We're always looking for either members of COE, CPTA, or site team members, because that's really key. But it's a very important process that it be fair, not unduly rigorous, but as standard as it can, as consistent as it can. So again, going back to fair. So I'll stop with there, and what I didn't cover, you're going to make sure and ask me about.
No, that's okay. So I just want to add to that, and that's you did an excellent job describing the role of the COE. And I just want to make sure that the audience understands the separation between the motivation of starting a veterinary college versus the accreditation of the quality of the program that's being proposed. The COE is rarely, if ever, involved in suggesting that a college be initiated. The COE usually, as far as I know, receives an application from a college that has been determined to start. And let me say that the quality of our colleges in the United States is largely determined by the minimum standards that are established through our accrediting process. It is not necessarily all inclusive of the qualities of our veterinary colleges. These are minimum standards that are designed to protect the public, and they are designed to evaluate the program and make sure that the program is likely to graduate quality graduates who will serve effectively, efficiently, and appropriately in delivering veterinary care. However, the motivation behind the establishment of those colleges usually comes from the states that determine that either their citizens need access to these programs, be it medical school or veterinary school, or because we have a capitalistic society, private institutions can also establish those schools. But we have a societal culture now that expects any of these schools, particularly that participate in medicine, to be accredited. Now, that culture is no different than our barbers. We expect them to be accredited too. Nursing schools are accredited. There are a host of professions that, as Dr. Donilon mentioned, voluntarily submit to a quality review of their program. But I just want to I want to make it clear that because of our capitalistic approach, because of our state government approach, the decision to have a school such as South Carolina that just opened a new veterinary school and is being reviewed by the COE, that decision was made by the state legislature, as was most of the schools that are presently established. And so so once again, we bring in the multivariate influences that we have to deal with when one it may be concerned about the size of the pipeline. If I would be hard pressed to challenge South Carolina about adding to the pipeline if they're having if they feel that their statistics add up to a shortage of veterinarians within South Carolina. On the other hand, Dr. Donilon has national statistics that must be considered in terms of the labor force and total employment within the nation. These are the gray areas that we have to deal with. And Dr. Donilon, I do not envy your job.
And we don't want to forget the international component too, because we are an international community, and each year we have US citizens who go abroad at the schools that are accredited. There are foreign schools that are accredited. About 1,200 come back each year. And
Yes.
so you're exactly right. It is a global system of education. I think we can be tremendously proud of our graduates, and Phil, you are a wonderful dean that has made certain that that is the case. But and vet tech is the same area. Accreditation serves a very important function. Then they come back and have to take exams, and we all know it was NAVLE score week this week, and that is another aspect, as you said.
Yeah. So we just wanted to at least bring that aspect of the profession up to talk about the complexity in trying to deal with our workforce situation. Are there any other issues that we did not address that you'd like to talk about, Dr. Donilon?
Let me jump in for just a minute if I can.
Sure. No, I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things that the end user, which in a large portion of our clinical practice, has to recognize is that this is a at minimum a 6-year process before you produce a working veterinarian. So when you put them on the assembly line, first you have to build the building. In other words, you got to build the vet school, and then it takes 4 years to construct the car that's coming off the assembly line. So when we add these new curriculum, these new schools, we have the COE that has the standard that they set. We have the NAVLE, that's another quality control. And we also have the AAVSB, the state boards, that's another quality control. So we are when we create a multitude of new schools, we're looking at a long-term answer, not a short-term response to the needs that people are feeling right now. And I think it's important that people recognize that it's going to be 6, 7, 8 years for some of these schools before they will be contributing to the pipeline. And correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, based upon our conversations, it's potentially 6, 7, 8 years before they're contributing to the pipeline. So many of the conversations that we've had in the last hour or so will help address the issues immediately, the efficiencies, the greater utilization of technicians, and some of the other technologies, including AI, which I'm sorry, all of us have been out of school long enough to remember AI when you had to pull a sleeve up to your shoulder, and not AI when it was a keyboard. But so it talks about all of the different things but the more schools is a long-term solution. It's that vaccination that will have a long-term impact while we have to continue to work to treat the short-term issues that we're dealing with. And so I just wanted to help the listeners understand that as we talk about this, next week, we're not going to be pumping out more veterinarians. Talk to me in 6 years. And there will be hiccups between now and 6 years from now.
Well, I think that's very well said, and it does point to the importance of DEIW, as you were talking about, leveraging your technicians, workplace culture. We haven't talked about liability. State board complaints, malpractice claims are up. The public is owlier. And by working on all of those things, on culture, teamwork, practice efficiency, that will help us in terms of that, which is key. Phil, you were asking for one thing in closing. I just want to mention, I want to make sure folks know that we post online throughout the year new policies that we want people to take a look at and get their thoughts, and existing policies to get their thoughts. And there's a very important existing one that is up for review right now. It's the Principles of Veterinary Medical Ethics. Ethics, very important to our profession. I want to encourage folks to take a look at it. There are things in it like on emergency coverage. It's a changing day. What does that mean? Diversity, equity, inclusion. What does that mean in terms of ethics? And so I didn't want to leave today without saying, folks, please take a look at that. It's important. Your feedback is very important. That has so much to do with what makes us the best profession we can be. And we just really welcome input on that.
Can I bring up another issue, which is states' rights? Goes back to 1776, the Constitution. We have 50 states and the District of Columbia with 50 different practice acts.
Right.
And so I know the Model Practice Act is also being discussed as well. It's got to be daunting, and I know it because of all the states within which I speak and consult. It's daunting to learn and understand 50 different practice acts, and especially if you live in like the four corner states where you could be practicing in 4 different states, especially if you're doing ambulatory or mobile. How do we, and how about the states that don't even recognize credentialed technicians in their practice act? How do we start to bring all of these moving parts together so we're singing the same music? We've got 50 different tunes being sung at the same time. And until we start to sing the same song, it becomes really hard to get some consistency. So is there any way that you can envision that we can start to build some of that consistency?
Now, we work really closely with AAVSB. We really try to build a relationship with them. We just got together with them again at VMX, looking on things like license portability. We even are trying to help with our federal veterinarians, our Army veterinarians, that they can get experience in various states and that sort of thing. And so we talk with AAVSB. The challenge can be at the state level that even if we agree, when it comes to the legislatures, different interests sometimes react in there, which makes it a challenge. But we really do try very hard to work together. And we're just talking about veterinary technicians, and we're going to be working on a Model Practice Act for vet techs. We were talking about theirs, and it goes back to what you two are talking about: conversations, dialogue, getting in the same room and seeing what's possible, not what's not possible, trying to open that door. We need to continue to do that. It's critically important. Again, I'm nothing but bullish on this profession because I do think those right dialogues are going to take place. But it takes people pushing us, and I know you two will, and we appreciate that because inertia is not a good thing.
I think that Peter has introduced one of the nuttier problems that we have to address. I have been involved and have observed as well the attempt of the AVMA and the AVSB to try to make a concerted change so that there was some uniformity. And I have seen effort after effort break down, as you said, because of when it gets into the individual state, there is usually an individual practitioner that, for whatever reason, has different interests and considerable internal clout, and is able to upend all of the work that has been done, up to that point. And I'm often struck with the chicken or the egg analogy. Do you start within the state for to try to get a consensus and then work outwardly from state to state, or do you come up with a national consensus and then try to work as with the model practice, try to work within the 50 states? And again, it's a challenge that we can't give up on, but it is also a lack of recognition of the balkanization of our regulatory processes among the 50 states that causes widespread inefficiencies. If a particular state won't even list the term registered veterinary technician
Right.
in the Practice Act, then how do we protect our technicians in terms of value or in terms of professional recognition? And we can't expect the veterinary technician profession to solve this on their own unless we force them to strike. and and to use uh, uh, more aggressive type remedies or tactics in order to achieve the remedy. And that's why we think that an open discussion is critical here. But the problem is getting the right people around the table at the right time, at the crucial time.
And persistence, as you said, it's not done
It's
easily.
exactly,
You got to keep after it.
exactly. And sometimes I think that even when I see these efforts break down, in many cases, the advances we've made, particularly in regulatory medicine, we've made because regions of states got together, or or a number of states adopted and adopted a particular uh, practice or a regulation, and over time it was proven to be beneficial. And I think sometimes, rather than trying to get a national mandate, that we get a business mandate, so to speak, among those who are forward, among those states that are forward thinking and see the benefit of it, and then work with the other states uh, through transparency and openness and outcomes, explanation of outcomes. But those are the challenges I think that we all have, and they start with conversations.
We are a very small profession when it comes down to it. And I think this part of our conversation today actually brings us full circle to organized veterinary medicine. And that the individual who may have a strong position within their state, acting individually, is not nearly as strong as the individual within the state who gets involved with their local association, their state association, and listens to other parts of the conversation, so that the influence is more global and not individual. It is interesting how one person can frequently put the brakes on change. So I really do think that this whole discussion of collaboration and cooperation and communication is what organized veterinary medicine does best. It brings people from disparate backgrounds with different opinions together, and hopefully at the end, you agree to disagree. What we can't afford in veterinary medicine, and it happens all the time, and you can see it in the letters to the editor in JAVMA or on podcasts and everything else, what we can't afford is polarization. We are too small and don't have quite as much strength as it would be great if we did. We really need to look how we can collaborate, cooperate, and communicate if we're going to try to get the outcomes that are in the best interest of the profession. And then I give a shout out to anybody involved with organized veterinary medicine. Here's the question that comes out of that. How do we get the next generation involved? How do we get the Gen Zs, the Gen Ys, who theoretically, based upon all reports, are not really joiners? They're not really part of, in many cases, they're not part of wanting to get involved. How do we get the next generation to step up to the plate and be a part of the decision making?
We have a lot to learn from them. And so it comes down to listening, making sure that we're relevant to them. But if we break down our segments, we've got 105,000 members now. Our target for last year was 102,500. I would say there's very few professions where they exceeded what their goal was for that. There's something about veterinarians, we are a community. And if you look at our member satisfaction, it is the recent grad that has a very high level. Now, that's key. We've got to continue to work on it. That means we have to continue to make them feel valued, whether it be mentor vet, whatever. Peter, you and your work on the economic strategy committee is so important for things like that. But I think if we're open to engaging with them at the level they want, they're phenomenal. you know, they are just going to take us to the next level. And I'm active on many of the Facebook groups, as I'm sure you are. DVM Moms happens to be one that's really, really active. And they do a wonderful job of engaging with the young folks and making them feel a part of the community. We just have to change how we do it, be open to it. But it's important that we do it.
I concur. And as we evolve, I think mentoring and leadership training are key to the effectiveness of developing future leaders. I think the leadership training that emphasizes lessons learned or lessons or not learned is critical in examining those issues that we have been slow to affect, and truly looking at the reasons why, so that we don't spin our wheels in useless politics. I think that's what's missing in most in most leadership training programs. I don't think we look specifically enough at our profession's issues because we aren't comfortable in discussing those kind of issues one-on-one, essentially, and dealing with the problems that prevented us from coming to a solution 10 years ago. I just think that those are key areas for future address. We've been fortunate to have Dr. Janet Donilon as a guest for our courageous conversation today, and we've touched on some pretty deep and some chronic issues of the profession that are affecting our profession. And I want to thank her for bearing with us. I want to thank her for sharing her wisdom as well as her experiences. And just want to say, Janet, if there's anything Peter and I can do to help you, you know that we'll just give us a call and we'll do whatever we can. But thank you so much for being our guest.
And thank you for honoring Dr. Bishop.
So,
Peter?
I just have one request before we log off. And how do I become part of the DVM Moms group?
I know it is my favorite group because it's the most positive. You know, a number of them are pretty negative. They are phenomenal.
Thank you, Janet, Dr. Donilon, for your time today, for your insights, and as a segue to what Phil said as we were wrapping, for your leadership. And I really would love to continue the conversation on leadership at a future date, because I think that is where we are headed in terms of needs down the road. On that note, thank you to Nationwide for your support. Nicole, thanks for keeping us on task. And thanks to our 11 listeners or 12 listeners. Please tell your friends, tell your children, tell anybody you know that we're out here conducting courageous conversations, and we encourage each and every one of you to participate in your own courageous conversations on whatever issues might come across your table. Thank you very much.
Is it peanut butter and jelly time?
You know, it's a little bit earlier than that, and I can't get the dog to move off my lap, but yeah, it's peanut butter and jelly time.
All right.
Well, thanks, you too. And Nicole, thank you.